So the Tories have lost 2 by-elections this week, one in Wakefield to Labour and one in Tiverton to the Lib Dems. Quite horrifyingly, the by-election in Wakefield was called because former MP Imran Ahmed Khan was jailed for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy in 2008. So it's not really surprising that the Tories lost that one. Labour had held the seat since 1930, but lost in the 2019 general election. The Conservatives won with 47% of the vote in 2019 to Labour's 39%. However, on Thursday, Labour won the seat back with 48% of the vote, which is up 8 points from the previous election, to the Tories' 30%, down 13 points. In Tiverton, Lib Dems won with 52.9% of the votes, up 38% on 2019, and the Tories got only 38.5%, down 21% from 2019, so a huge gain there for the Lib Dems. Labour, quite embarrassingly I think, only received 3.7%, down 15.9 points, and resulting in them losing their deposit. So what do these 2 results say about the state of today's politics in the UK, would you say, Curtis?
Really, it's reaffirming what we already thought. Wakefield was a solidly Labour seat. You said it's been held from then since the 30s. 2019 went to the Conservatives, and now it's won back by Labour. What was unique about the 2019 general election? It was a Brexit election. So I think what happened there is a blip to the Conservatives to ensure Brexit got done, shall I say. Now, Brexit hasn't disappeared. It's still a massive political issue, massive constitutional crisis, but it's sort of parked itself in the mainstream debate for now. So people are looking at other ways or looking at different things when it comes to voting. So I don't think there's anything spectacular about this. Labour should have won the seat. They did win the seat. What this is a disaster for Boris Johnson. He's lost 2 seats. His position is now incredibly weak. Will he lead the next general election? I don't know. I think if you're a Tory MP, you're going to want to get rid of him. He is now becoming a liability. He received a confidence vote quite recently. He won it. However, if you look at the numbers, Margaret Thatcher, Theresa May, she had more MPs backing her when she won the confidence vote. Boris Johnson had less people backing him. They both resigned. So his position is untenable. The win for Labour is obviously good. It is obviously good. But polling data actually shows that the win in Wakefield was more to do with the fact that Tories didn't go out and vote, rather than Labour necessarily taking Tory voters. Now, what do they get? 47% of the vote, 48% of the vote. If you look historically at the recent elections, the general elections, going back to 1983, you'll see that the share of the vote for Labour has been around 45% to 52%. So there's nothing really out of whack when it comes to the percentage of the vote. Now, of course, 2019 they lost it, but they still got, I believe, over 40%. 2017 they got 50% of the vote. 1997 they got 57% of the vote. Obviously, that was a huge landslide victory. But yeah, it seems to be hovering around 45 to 52% of votes. There's nothing spectacular about this. It just looks like that Labour managed to essentially keep their base, but the Tories, their vote dramatically dropped. In Tiverton, I think this is a fantastic win for the Lib Dems. The vote swing is absolutely seismic. But obviously you did note that the Lib Dems lost a deposit in Wakefield and Labour lost a deposit in Tiverton. So it's clear that tactical voting was severely present. Going forward, though, for the Labour Party, they're going to want to keep Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson has been the strategy for the Labour Party. It's like, hey, look, vote for us because we're not this guy. We're not him. We're competent. We can manage the country better. And if Boris Johnson goes and someone else who looks competent, I don't think there's many competent Tory MPs, but if someone kind of looks competent, that's going to force the Labour Party to move elsewhere, change their strategy to policies, vision, ideas in which they have none.
So do you think then this is going to be the kick up the bum that Labour need? Like, obviously you said really the reason why they won Wakefield was because Tory voters didn't go out and vote, but you did also touch on the fact that 2019 was a Brexit election, and obviously now that, yes, Brexit, you know, is still a thing. We're still kind of going through the consequences of Brexit, but it's not really as much of a talking point anymore. So, you know, therefore, maybe people who voted, who didn't, well, not, I was going to say voted Tory, or in particular, I suppose, didn't vote Labour because of their stance on Brexit in the 2019 election. Is this now Labour's opportunity to, like you say, talk about what they stand for, what their policies are, to kind of gain back those voters that they lost? You know, now people are more interested in the cost of living and that kind of like bread and butter politics and everyday politics that we go through, and, you know, our living standards and everything. I haven't really seen a lot of what Labour stands for. Do you think we might start to see that now?
Well, they certainly have an opportunity to do so. Will they? No, definitely not. You're right, because Brexit has been slightly parked for a bit. This gives Labour an opportunity to talk about the bread and butter issues. If you ask people, and polling has shown this, that who do you trust more on tackling the cost of living crisis, they will say Labour. Because we've had the Tories for the last 12 years, because we've had all these huge crises in the last decade, no one seems to believe that Conservatives can actually do anything about it, and that's where Labour can pick up votes, an opportunity on this. The problem is, Labour don't seem to be doing that. They've been outflanked to the left by the Conservatives on many issues. When it came to corporation tax rises a few years ago, the Labour Party said, now is not the time, don't raise corporation tax. Rishi Sunak said, we should raise corporation tax. When it comes to energy discounts, the Labour said, what, they're going to give £350, £400 to the lowest earners to help with energy prices. Well, the Conservatives came in and outflanked to the left and offered even higher prices. So materially, Labour isn't saying anything on the economy, which is dangerous, because I feel like the opportunities the Tories are giving to the Labour Party, they're giving them a path to power. They're saying it, take the keys to Downing Street. And to simply say we're not the Tories, to try and outflank them rhetorically on the right in terms of the economy, say we're more sensible on the economy, isn't going to work. Now, historically, progressive parties in the US, Democrats, over here, the Labour Party, centre-left parties, do better on higher turnouts. So it's not good enough to simply say nothing on the big crisis we all face today and just simply say we're not the Tories. You're not going to enthuse your base. You're not going to enthuse voters. If you look at polling now in terms of voting intention in the midterms, yes, the Labour Party are ahead. You know, some polling have put them over 10 percentage points above the Tories, but that doesn't say anything about the election results. You know, what, 2023 maybe is going to be the next general election. That doesn't say anything about that, because Ed Miliband, you know, a lot of the times he was ahead of the Tories by 10%. Look what happened there. What matters in the general election is getting people out to vote. Asking people now, what do you think about the state of politics? Well, they're only going to be people like me, policy wonks, people who spend every single day and, you know, involve themselves in politics. They're the sort of people who are responding to polling data. And obviously, if you look at the state of politics today, look at the state of politics in the last few years, liberal pundits, those are policy wonks, political nerds, are going to choose Labour. But everyday people who don't follow politics, who only get out and vote during general election, that's a completely different story.
And I'd have to say, like, I am one of those people. Obviously, I am slightly more engaged in general day-to-day politics, but only to a certain extent, if I'm completely honest. Like, I will get way more into it during a general election, and I think, like you said, most people are also going to do that. When you're in this current period that we're in now, of that in-between stage, obviously, yeah, some places get a by-election for whatever reason. Not that doesn't happen to everybody. So it kind of feels like when there isn't a general election on, you can't really change anything that's going on right now. We can all sit here and say that the cost of living crisis is awful, and none of us feel like we're in good positions, but it also feels like, what can we do right now? Because there is, you know, we're probably a couple of years away from another general election, and I think that disengages people from politics, to the point that then they can be potentially easily swung when the general elections do come around. and they actually want to try and decide who to vote for, I suppose.
That's the issue with local democracy. There's a lack of local democracy, isn't there? You look at turnout in this election, you look at turnout on all by-elections, look at turnout on council elections, the local elections. They're far lower than a general election. That's an obvious point, of course, because when there's a national election,
more is at stake.
More is at stake, but also there's a massive hype. There's a media hype around it. It's big at stake, isn't it? It's the great will of the British people to decide the democratic will of the great British people are taking a historic democratic vote. Of course, yes, there's going to be way more hype. And no one's going to be expecting the same level of turnout in a by-election and a general election, but there still is a issue. There is a disconnect, and it is important that people do get involved in the political process. However, I don't blame voters. The political system is alienating. You look inside the House of Lords, what does it look like? It looks like a blast from the 16th century, and it's not been updated since. It doesn't represent people in this country. We're a multiracial country. It's a place full of old white men, old white landlords, essentially. And nothing's really changed from that. So it's incredibly alienating, and it is hard to get people involved in the political process. But then that's, elites and those in power benefit from those who don't really get involved. But again, it's not the fault of voters, it's our political process.
Well, hopefully we can kind of do our bit to get more people involved and engaged.